Well, why is it that so many Australian politicians and media have turned what appears to be a commercial trade issue into a political standoff?
Well, Tamor, I think the view in Australia is pretty universal that the Chinese legal system has no integrity at all and that there's no reason to think there's any substance to these charges. After all, it's a pretty bizarre idea that the second most senior executive of Rio in China would have suddenly embarked on a life of crime in the middle of tense price negotiations over iron ore with China, and just as the Chinalco, Chinese government-backed firm's bid to buy a big chunk of Rio was failing. Now that stretches the credulity of coincidence beyond credibility. These are clearly political charges. There's no substance to them.
Well, speculating about Stern Who's particular motives, and let's not forget there are 3 other people involved in this. It's not just about Australia. But setting aside speculating about whether or not he might have committed a crime, isn't it equally futile to sit there and expect that Australians know how the Chinese legal system works and are in a position to criticise it?
No, Tamor, I think you're wrong on all counts. First of all, the other 3 people involved are all also employees of Rio, and they get even fewer rights under this arbitrary legal system than Stern Who does because they're not an Australian citizen.
But why are you calling it
Secondly,
arbitrary?
you don't have to know anything about the legal system to... Well, it's abundantly obvious to anyone who lives in the real world that the idea that the Rio Deputy Chief Executive suddenly and alone amongst all people of his type and rank and so forth embarked on this life of crime just as the Chinalco deal was failing and just as China was so upset about the iron ore price negotiations is patently ridiculous. There's not a single person, including the most eminent China scholars in Australia or in Asia, who doesn't regard these charges as utterly ridiculous. They're an attempt by China to intimidate Australia, and I think they've been successful in that regard.
I don't think anyone has accused Stern Who of embarking upon a life of crime, merely of transgressing the laws, and plenty of businessmen do that all over the world.
Well, the Chinese government has.
Let me just quote you what your own foreign minister said. Stephen Smith said,
the Chinese government initially accused him of espionage.
Stephen, sorry.
Tamor, let me just get clear on this fact.
I just want to quote to you what your foreign minister said.
Because I initially arrested him of espionage.
Conspiracy theories that everyone...
You're saying nobody has accused him of embarking on a life of crime. The fact is the Chinese government has accused him of embarking on a life of crime. Look, espionage, corruption and bribery.
That's a single charge. That hardly amounts to a life of crime. You're playing semantics with me. Let me just put to you the words of your own foreign minister.
Charges,
May I ask you a question here?
And it certainly is a life of crime.
Let me put to you the words of your own foreign minister. Even in our own system, from time to time, hearings are closed for confidentiality reasons. Why is Australia getting so angry that it happens also in China?
Well, first of all, Tamor, I think your questions are silly. The Chinese government did accuse Stern Who of embarking on a life of crime. They accused him of espionage, bribery, giving bribes and receiving bribes. 3 very serious charges. Now, I do agree with you that the Rudd government has been weak in its response on this matter, but it has certainly protested at every step of the way, and there is no one in the Rudd government who believes this is a legitimate trial. The chairman of our Parliamentary Foreign Affairs Committee issued a statement on Friday saying the trial is entirely political. But look, it's silly that we're even debating that. No serious analyst of China regards this as anything other than an attempt to intimidate Australia, which has been largely successful.